Hello everybody, my name is Denise. I'm a counselor and welcome back to the channel. Today's topic will be on true freedom. So I'm just going to take reference from two books that I'm working on right now. First one is this one, St. Catherine of Siena, Mystic of Fire, Preacher of Freedom. And the second book is this, Reality Therapy, 21st Century by Robert E. Boulding. So this was my textbook when I was doing my choice theory certification, and this is just a book that I got off Word on Fire because I'm a big fan of Bishop Robert Barron. Okay, so I'm just going to start by referencing this book. Let's look at page 108. So okay, just a quick background about St. Catherine of Siena. She's one of the doctors of the church, so she's like one of those very few female doctors of the church, which are like excellent teachers, and just right beside people like Saint Teresa of Avila. She also teaches in a really clear way. She's not just like Saint Teresa of Avila. She wasn't like theologically trained, but somehow she learned directly from Jesus himself. So a lot of her insights are pretty awesome. Okay. Sorry, I feel that I don't know why I keep using the word awesome. Apparently my vocabulary to praise people isn't really very rich, so I just use awesome. I'm sorry for that. Okay, so let's go back to page 108. Many times in the dialogue, most notably in dialogue 144, certain set realities of both sense and spirit are brought into sharp relief. Each one of them something from which people need to be liberated. Disordered appetite, taking pleasure in dishonorable things, listening judgmentally, gossiping and being disagreeable, complaining and judging good deeds as bad and evil ones as good, insatiable gluttony and perverse desire. But even here, though apparently front and center, freedom from is not the exclusive focus. So what I just read, like all those things like disordered appetite, gossiping, complaining, insatiable gluttony, all that is freedom from. Okay, so there are two aspects, freedom from and then freedom to. Freedom from, you can imagine it is like they are like chains. Like we want to go for a jog, for example, but there are chains and weights at your feet, so that when you want to jog, you feel like you cannot do what you want to do. Okay, so that's freedom from. So what St. Catherine of Siena was really pushing for was the freedom from all these carnal sins. Okay, so that we have the freedom to do what, like in the metaphor of the person jogging with the chains and the weights at her feet, at her ankles, right? What she wants is to jog. So what is it? The freedom to jog here, freedom to, okay, this is a quote from St. Catherine. I gave you eyes to look at the sky and everything else and the beauty of creation through me, and to look at my mysteries. I gave you your ears to listen to my word and to pay heed to your neighbor's needs. I gave you your tongue to proclaim my word, to confess your own sins, and to work for the salvation of souls. Your hands were made to serve your neighbors when you see them sick, and to help them with alms in their need. Your feet were given you to serve by carrying your body to places that are holy and useful to you and your neighbors for the glory and praise of my name. Right? So if I go back to the metaphor of freedom from and freedom to, if we are always so attached to bad habits of like maybe indulging our gluttonous desires, right, eating and sensual desires, or we keep spending our mind evaluating the sins of others and gossiping about them, then we will no longer have enough energy and capacity to do what God has created us to do, which is like freedom to see, like what was mentioned just now. Freedom to look at the sky and everything else, to admire God's creation, to listen to your neighbor's needs and to attend to them, your feet to go to their need and to carry your body to places that are holy and useful to you and your neighbors for the glory and praise of my name. So when St. Catherine writes like this, that means that's a message directly from God. So that's what true freedom is. Which is like, if you think about it, it's quite mind-boggling, right? Because in our modern world, it's very utilitarian. True freedom is the freedom to be able to do whatever we want, whenever we want. Like if I want to go to New York, and eat at this posh restaurant. If I have all the resources in the world, all the money in the world, I'm some billionaire, I can just charter my own private plane, go there, have lunch there, and then come back in the next day, or maybe like, you know, stay in a posh hotel there. So, that is true freedom. But according to St. Catherine, that's not the way. If you do that, you're actually still wrapped up in your sins and not fulfilling your full potential. I think, okay, I heard this from Robert Barron, but it is a quote from Saint Irenaeus. The glory of God is a man fully alive. So it is only when we are fully engaged in God's will for us, which is the service of man, that's when we are fully alive. If we are just indulging in all the sensual things or in self-righteousness, complaining about others, then we're not really fully free. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go on to this book. Okay, this book is written by Robert Ruboding, and it comes from Choice Theory Reality Therapy, founded by a psychiatrist called William Glasser. So he wasn't, when he was alive, and even right now, choice theory isn't so considered so mainstream. Some people actually think that it's not that acceptable, not as well known and acceptable as, for example, cognitive behavior therapy. But you see, I've been using CBT and I use choice theory as well in my job as a counselor, and I would say that it's quite effective. And I use it in my own life as well, so it's quite effective. And even the brain chart that William Glasser wrote, design is quite brilliant and very aligned to modern day neuroscience. So maybe right now he's still in the martyr stage, but one day I believe that this is really going to be well respected, even more well respected than it is. Okay, anyway, before I just get carried away praising choice theory, so let's quote from a page. Page 136. The locus or place of control is always inside the person. Many people believe that their control does not originate from within them and demonstrate this belief the language of external control. For example, they made me do it. I don't drink too much. My family has a problem. She upsets me. You make me angry. A fit of depression came over me. The weather got me down. Okay. So all these things means it's a language. So this kind of language thing is very aligned to things like NLP, like even transactional analysis. But it's also a focus of choice theory. When we talk like that, we feel that like we just so-called submit our freedom to external circumstances. So people who talk like that tend to spend a lot of energy evaluating the behaviors of other people. Okay. Let me concretize it with an example. For example, if I was from a very dysfunctional family with parents that were both alcoholic and abusive, so when I go into therapy, I could spend like 100% of my time like complaining about my parents and trying to think about, what were they doing and why are they so bad as parents and blah blah blah. So my therapist might listen to me empathetically, and then after 10 sessions, she might educate me. Oh, this is like family systems and all that, and like, this is why your parents are like that, they have their own trauma and all that. So okay, great. So after 10 sessions, I become an expert in evaluating the feelings and behaviors of others, and like why are they like this. So maybe I understand it a bit more and maybe get some insight there. But then if I ask myself the question, whose behavior can I control? Oh, then I get stumped for a while. Oh gosh, I keep trying to understand my parents and evaluating their behaviors, but I can't control them. I only can control myself. I should have been spending time evaluating my own behaviors and how it's leading, which direction is leading me, right? For example, I can say, yes, I've got this not so happy childhood, but what do I want for my future? What are some things I'm struggling with? Or I'm having a lot of feelings of bitterness and resentment, right? So maybe I don't have that much control over my feelings, but I can control my thinking and my action. What thoughts can I think? What actions can I do to deal with that feeling of resentment and unforgiveness towards my parents? And then keep evaluating and honing all my effort into this, tunneling it into things that I can control, which is myself. So it is actually quite aligned to St. Catherine of Siena, what she said. And also, the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who are poor in spirit, what it means is actually to keep on thinking about your own sins and evaluating them. Instead of spending our time evaluating the sins of others, we evaluate our own sins, because that's where we can control, where we can really make great leaps. Okay, give you another quote, because I know this is kind of abstract, but I don't want to underestimate you guys and then like try to dumb everything down. I'm just going to just say it and trust that you understand it, alright? Okay. Okay, this is from a sentence, page 99. This is why she would instinctively offer advice such as the following. The vice you thought you were recognizing in others, put it on your own back. So this comes from a chapter 5, where they, very interestingly, they compared St. Catherine's teachings with, Carl Jung's depth psychology about the shadow. Okay, so over here, right, she remember the vice you thought you were recognizing others, put it on your own back. For example, like the original example, the alcoholic parents who were very negligent and maybe even abusive when you're young. Instead of focusing and evaluating that behavior, like why were my parents like that, you try to spot a bit of that shadow inside you. Like, when have I been neglectful to my own kids? What can I do to become less neglectful and to be more attentive to their needs? What's one baby step that I can take to become a better parent today? Or like, so my parents were neglectful to my own needs. Am I attentive to my own needs? How can I better meet my own needs today? So all these are much better questions than evaluating your family. Like, why were they like this? What can I do to make them change? I mean, that's not within your control. A lot of energy leaches out, and it also fuels resentment and bitterness, which impedes your freedom. Okay. So, okay, Jung tend to place darkness within the Godhead, which means that because he lived in a time where he witnessed World War I, World War II, and he also had a lot of visions. If you read the Red Book, he wrote about the visions of, I think, rivers of blood and all that. So this is what's going to happen. He actually had that dream before World War I and II, I think. Yeah. And he was so shocked by the presence of all this innocent suffering that he decided to place evil within the Godhead. So I think he wrote books like a reply to the letter of Job. Because Job is the suffering servant, right? So he actually, in Jung's psychology, he placed evil within the Godhead. But that is something that is a departure from the Christian faith and St. Catherine's doctrine. So let me read this. This is written by Paul Murray. He wrote this. Whether Jung's intention was to speak of the God of history, the actual living God, or merely the God of myth, the placing of evil in the Godhead marked a decisive break with mainstream Christian tradition. Jung, quite early on in his career, became convinced that the age-old Christian insistence on the absolute goodness of God left believers in an unhappy and dangerous dilemma. Not having a model in the Godhead that would help them to integrate the darker dimensions of their own lives, believers over the centuries felt constrained either to repress or in some way ignore the black shadow, and with tragic results. Okay, so that is Paul Murray's commentary on Jung. But if we go back to Catherine of Siena, Catherine affirmed that God is light in whom there is no darkness at all. God is very simple. God is pure goodness and pure light, very simple, not complex like man. And there is no darkness within him. And in fact, even evil, right, there is a particular theology, was quoted in front, but I don't have the page right now, that says that evil isn't really truly identity. Evil is just the absence of good. Which means that like the privation of good, I think it's called, in the absence of good, it forms a vacuum, and that's where evil is, that's where sin is. So when you receive Jesus in you and you become more and more like Jesus, it pushes that darkness out and you become more and more pure and more like Jesus. But in that process, there is a step that is unavoidable, and that is called your acquaintance to your own shadow, which is the darkness of your own humanity. And also the responsibility, like the share in the darkness of all that has been done wrong in reality. So people like Hitler, Adolf Hitler, those who commit genocides, the recognizing of that potential even within yourself to do that, and then feeling a big tsunami of remorse about that grief of your own human condition, and hence feeling so depraved and drawing closer to God for courage. Okay, so that is very different from the concept of integrating darkness within yourself, which is actually Jung's, like if you are like an analytical psychologist, that will be your ultimate aim, to integrate the shadow aspects like your aggression, your sexuality, the parts of you that you're not really proud of, to find suitable circumstances to integrate them back to your life. But that is actually quite different from the Christian tradition, which is, to tell you honestly, I'm kind of ashamed, because for a long time I didn't really grasp that, and even in my therapy sessions I do train that, like help my clients unleash their aggression, but using a Jungian form of psychology or philosophy versus a Christian philosophy. Which is not to say that Christian philosophy don't encourage the aggression, because I know a lot of saints, like Saint Alphonsus. He was a very gifted lawyer, and when he needed to argue his point of view, unleash his aggression in a non-violent way, he could do it. It is just the motivations behind it is very different. It is not really integrating the shadow, but drawing from the Holy Spirit to preach and proclaim what is right for the world. Okay, so I'm going to read this last paragraph. But this bold claim is demonstrably untrue, as we have discovered in the case of Catherine of Siena. No one was more keen than Catherine to affirm that God is light, in whom there is no darkness at all. And yet, Catherine, together with other medieval mystics and authors, clearly show in both speech and writing not the least fear or hesitation, but rather an instinctive courage and humility in openly acknowledging what Jung calls the dark shadow and what Catherine calls the dark of self-knowledge. So, okay, earlier on this book, St. Catherine was also a major proponent of this. But once you are face to face with your own shadow, your own knowledge of darkness within you, it has to be accompanied with the overwhelming mercy of God's grace. Like your sin is so dark, but God's love and light is big enough to overcome that. So stop dwelling in that sin, stop becoming paralyzed by it and feeling so unworthy to serve the Lord that you just your freedom is now impeded. You're just paralyzed and you stay at home, you don't serve, you don't do anything, you don't pray, because you're so overwhelmed by your own unworthiness. She said that is like a lie from the devil. Instead, whenever the shadow comes to you and you know how sinful you are, acknowledge the mercy of God. So when both are combined, that's where true freedom comes. Okay, so before I close, I just want to reiterate one more time what I started with. True freedom is freedom from disordered appetites, take pleasure in dishonorable things, listen judgmentally. Yes, psychologists and counselors, I'm talking to you. Listening judgmentally is actually one of the things, the chains that are keeping us from being free. Gossiping and being disagreeable, complaining and judging good deeds as bad and evil ones as good. Yep, in the modern world, a lot of people do that because the world is almost like upside down. When you do something good, people will condemn you. When you do something bad, they will praise you. It's quite bizarre. Insatiable gluttony and perverse desire, all these are freedom from. In order to have freedom to, okay, this one, what Jesus told Catherine. I gave you eyes to look at the sky and everything else and the beauty of creation through me, and to look at my mysteries. I gave you your ears to listen to my word and to pay heed to your neighbor's needs. So this is also for counselors like us. We listen to their needs, right? I gave you your tongue to proclaim my word and to confess your own sins. Your own sins, not the sins of your mother, your father, your spouse, okay? You confess your own sins. And to work for the salvation of souls. Your hands were made to serve your neighbors when you see them sick, and to help them with alms in their need. Your feet were given you to serve by carrying your body to places that are holy and useful to you and your neighbors, for the glory and praise of my name. So that's all for today. I'm also going to put a link at the end of this video on a recent video that I saw by Bishop Robert Barron talking about law, how the law will set you free. It's really well scripted and all that. It was one of his homilies, so I'm going to put that later, I think, over here, so you can take a look at it. Hope this video was helpful for you, and if it was, kindly press like, share and subscribe. Thank you so much everyone. God bless.